Hello and welcome back to Flayvor Sessions. I'm Tari, and today we're talking about something that shapes every meal you've ever had. Can you guess what it is? It's your flavor identity. Have you ever thought about why you like the foods you like? Not just your favorite dish, but why certain flavors feel right to you and others don't. Why something that tastes incredible to one person might feel unfamiliar or even off to someone else. And it's because what we consider good food isn't just about taste, but it's about identity. Flavor is learned, and what you grew up eating shapes what you recognize as good. Your palate didn't start when you decided to cook. And it didn't start when you became an adult. It started much earlier than that. Some scientists even say it starts as early as you being in your mother's womb. And once you come out, what you experience is your family's food culture. Now, it never directly gets labeled that way as food culture, but what was cooked, how it was seasoned, how often you ate, what was considered normal, that didn't just feed you, it also trained you. So when I talk about it training you, what's kept in your house becomes the norm. If something is always around, you learn to expect it. You learn to recognize it and you learn to prefer it. So if soda isn't a part of your routine, it may never become something you crave. If fruits, grains, or fermented foods are present, they become familiar instead of different. So, this brings me to something else, another type of culture, and that is snack culture, which is very big. And snacking all day changes how we experience food, whether you realize it or not. But remember in the last episode, we talked about anticipation, that build up before you eat? That actually helps create desire. When you're constantly eating, hunger cues get dulled, anticipation gets interrupted, and meals stop feeling like an experience. And when hunger is always partially satisfied, food stops feeling exciting. So that's just something for you to think about. And snacking is huge. Believe me, I have 3 children. And they come home from school and what do they want? They want a snack. But keep this in mind. If you want to create that anticipation for dinner, if you want them to eat fully and even with yourself, maybe cut down some of the snacking. Now, when I'm talking about school too, while I'm here, let's just talk about school and child care food culture because it doesn't just stop at the home. School environments play a role too with your children. And a lot of times, children are being taught to expect fries, pasta, and nuggets. And kid friendly is often just familiar friendly. Now, take this into account. If what you are serving at home aligns with what the school is serving, whether it be the fries, the nuggets, or whether it be something on a healthier tip, which we do have other schools that are creating different environments. And I'm loving that I'm seeing that where they're doing tasting portions, family style eating, and they're exposing children to different textures and different flavors. Whatever that alignment is being reinforced from home to that school environment and from that school environment to home. So just keep that in mind. Now let's talk about world culture. We talked about family culture. Let's talk about world culture. And different cultures prioritize different signals. We talked about signals last week. Some emphasize depth and spice, balance and restraint. Some might emphasize richness and comfort, brightness and freshness. And culture doesn't just influence what we eat, it defines what we believe food is supposed to taste like. And once again, I refer back to that last episode. We talked about the anticipation gap. And that's really just the space between what you expect food to taste like and what it actually tastes like. And if that term is new to you, I encourage you to go back and listen to the last episode on cravings because it's important to understand what we're talking about here. So when all the signals don't hit, when something is missing or off or unbalanced, you feel it, even if you can't explain it. And another way of experiencing that same gap is when your flavor identity meets something unfamiliar. You taste something new, and it doesn't match the pattern your brain recognizes. It doesn't hit the signals that you're used to. So instead of feeling satisfying, it feels off. And it's not because the food is bad, but because it doesn't align with what you have learned to expect. And this is usually the moment where a decision gets made, not always out loud, but internally. Your brain is trying to figure out, does this fit what I know? Do I understand this really? And when the answer is no, it can feel like resistance. But what if the moment isn't really rejection? What if this is the moment, a beginning of expansion? And when I talk about expansion, I mean expansion in your palate. Because if that's true, then the question isn't whether you like it or not. The question becomes, how do you learn to understand it? So let's talk about that. Let's talk about using the signals. Reframe it. The first step in how you experience what you're tasting is to reframe it. Instead of asking, do I like this? Let's ask, what's actually happening here? What feels off? What do I think is missing based on what I am used to? Is it lacking salt? Do I think it needs brightness? Is it rich but not balanced? What's really going on here? And it's not that you're judging the food, you're just trying to figure out how to read it. And in trying to figure out how to read it, I encourage you to understand the context. Because sometimes it's not that you didn't like the food too, but it's that you didn't understand the dish. Where does the dish come from? How is it meant to be eaten? What is it trying to do? And when you experience food in its proper context, you're tasting more than ingredients. You're tasting history, technique, and intention. So the context gives flavor meaning. And a good example of this is, let's say, tacos. If you really want to understand Mexican flavors and you want to understand the culture behind tacos, well, I'm not going to encourage you to go to Taco Bell because that is not it. But what I am going to encourage you to do is maybe you go to a little hole in the wall restaurant that is serving street tacos with all the spices, cooking the meat with all the flavors of Mexico so that you better understand what a taco is really supposed to taste like. So when I talk about learning about the context of a flavor, that is what I mean. Taste how it is really supposed to be done first. Understand where the flavors are really coming from and why this dish is what it is. And then once you do that, you don't have to completely jump into making something unfamiliar, but what you can do is take what you already know and build from there. So, a familiar dish, maybe using some of that same spice that you tasted in the tacos, maybe using that technique that was used to make the tacos. So, you see where I'm coming from. Take a familiar dish and try adding one unfamiliar thing to it. That's how you start with what you know. You're not starting over, but what you're doing is you're trying to expand what you have learned. Now, next is repetition. And this is where you really start to grow. Because the more you use what you've learned, the more it shows up in things that you cook. So you start recognizing the flavors faster that might have been unfamiliar. And you start combining those flavors more naturally. And you start building those flavors into your cooking without even really thinking about it or overthinking it. And what was once unfamiliar becomes a part of your repertoire. This is how your palate expands. Not all at once, but through understanding, repetition, and experience. And what started as experimentation becomes something more natural. And you're not losing your identity. What you're doing is you're building it. You're building on what your family culture has taught you. You're building on what maybe your world culture has taught you. And your flavor identity becomes something new and blended. It now becomes a part of how you cook and how you taste. So now you're not just working from what you were given, you're working from what you've built. You get to choose what your flavor identity becomes. So through this conversation, I hope you've come to realize that flavor is more than taste. It's memory, it's culture, it's exposure, it's experience. And it's everything that shaped how you recognize food. And when you start to understand that, you stop asking, do I like this? And you start asking, what am I actually tasting? What do I understand about this? What could this become? And that's when everything begins to shift because now you're not just eating food, you're learning how to experience it. And if you want to go deeper into the idea of understanding your taste and building your own food perspective, check out my book, The Flavor Journal, Believe in Your Taste and Your Food Vision. It's available on Amazon, and I'll drop the link below. But it's a tool to help you start recognizing what you like and to build from there. And not only that, I told you guys I would give you more details on the upcoming supper club. I'm calling it Flayvor Sessions, the table series. But tickets are available now, and I will also drop that link below so that you can go and check it out. But it will be on May 17th at 6 p.m. So I look forward to having you guys come. I am very excited about it. But once again, I want to thank you for listening. And as always, thank you for tasting bravely. And I'll see you in the next Flayvor Sessions.